Good morning, Professor Tomlinson here again. Another chapter of our jazz and commercial journey. Hanging out with my Western Connecticut State University jazz piano students. Welcome once again. Today we're going to delve into some jazz chord voicings, and we are going to apply those to a great Duke Ellington tune called Satin Doll. Again, I suggested listening to Oscar Peterson playing this tune. I recorded it many times. You could also possibly listen to the original Duke Ellington from 1953. Also, obviously great. So last week we reviewed seventh chords in C. So you want to make sure that you have that sheet in front of you as we're doing this tutorial. And also, I just included Satin Doll harmonized. So this is some work I did for you this time. From this point on, you're going to be doing this work on your own, more or less, or we'll do it together. But we are going to be focusing mostly on the chord progression of a 2-5-1 chord progression. And you're just going to see how often this chord progression is going to come up in tunes that you're playing. So when we were working on chords last week, we were using the key of C because it's convenient, okay? So we found that the C major seventh in the key of C, kind of obvious, is the 1 chord, all right? Happens to be a major seventh because of the intervals. Major third, perfect fifth, major seventh. Now we're going to focus on the 2 chord, okay? In the key of C, minor seventh, all right? Root, minor seventh, perfect fifth, minor seventh. Okay, and we're going to skip over now to the 5 chord because these are the chords that are going to be in our chord progression. Root, major third, perfect fifth, and a minor seventh. Okay, very different kind of sound. Okay, so we also, your assignment was to be able to play those chords in the key of D, all right? So F sharp and C sharp in the key signature. Okay, you got to keep that in mind as you're playing these. The 1 chord, D major seventh. In this key, the 2 chord, E minor seventh. And the 5 chord is A seventh. Okay? We're going to get back to that in just a few moments as we start to look at Satin Doll. All right, so now we're going to skip down to the to the 4th line of 7th chords in C. The part of the chart that says 3-note voicings for 2-5-1 progressions in a major key, all right? Measures 1 and 2 of this line are for a certain set of keys, the keys B flat through F. So if the 1 chord, and that's what represents what key we're in, is B flat or B, C, D flat, D, E flat, E, or F, if you use what I call the A, or I didn't make this up, I didn't call them that, but what are called the A voicings, your chords are going to be in a good register, which is really important for your left hand, not to be too high or too low, or they're going to sound really muddy, okay? So remember, we get our key center from the 1 chord. So if you see a D minor chord, don't assume you're in D minor. Maybe it's a 2-5-1 in the key of C. So let's take a look at the, quote, A voicings for a 2-5-1, this case in the key of C. All right, so when we're looking at these chord voicings, we're going to think about what kind of intervals we want to put into our chord voicings, both to make the chord sound strong the way it's supposed to sound, and also to try to create smooth voice leading at least as often as possible. So our 2-5-1 progression in the key of C. Protocol is always going to be to go from the lowest interval to the highest interval. Okay, so when I'm speaking about intervals with you, I'm always going from the lowest to the highest. Okay, so it could be confusing if you don't remember that. Okay, lowest to highest. We're going up the ladder with the intervals. So D minor seventh is spelled with the root, and then remember F was the minor third, and C was the minor seventh. Okay? Nothing wrong with the fifth of the chord. We are not against the fifth of the chord, but we have really pared these chords down to their bare minimums. So the root, the third, and the seventh are really the big players for this particular set of voicings. Okay, so we've left the fifth out. Okay, it's not wrong, but just for these voicings, we're not going to play that one. Okay, that's followed by the G seventh. This one will be spelled again from the bottom upward, 7, 1, 3. Do that several times. D minor 7, G7. D minor 7, G7. Okay, notice really smooth voice leading. All right, and very easy to play. It's actually easier than a lot of root position chord voicings jumping around. G seventh, and then finally C major seventh, 1, 3, 7. Okay, leaving the fifth out of each of those chords and sort of zigzagging between a chord that's got the root on the bottom and a chord that's got the seventh on the bottom. Okay, while I'm tossing out all these numbers at you, I want to toss out a couple of other numbers that don't represent chords but represent your fingering. Okay, so playing these chords in your left hand, if any of these chords has the root on the bottom, I would like you to play it with this fingering: your pinky, your middle, your thumb, or 5, 3, 1. Any of the chords that have the seventh on the bottom, I want you to use your top 3 fingers, your 3, 2, 1. And if you keep using this fingering over and over again, you will see, okay, how easy these combinations are, okay? You'll probably notice in the second measure of the line, there's also a C6, okay? That can substitute for C major seventh. You might have just heard my cat. Skylar is here. All right, C major seventh. C6 can substitute. Why would I do that? Well, it's a nice sound. Also, in some cases where maybe the melody comes in on the downbeat and I don't want this particular rub between B and C, I can substitute the sixth. That sounds really nice and it doesn't rub against the melody note. Melody is king. Okay. I think what I'm going to do is cover the B voicings now, and then in the next video we'll get into Satin Doll. Okay, so B voicings, probably best used if the one chord is F, G flat, G, A flat, A, B flat, or B. And again, there's a lot of wiggle room. You can cheat on these rules, but if you apply them, they're going to usually work pretty well. So here we've flipped our chords around, and I've used the key of G as a good example of a key that you might want to use the quotation B voicings for. And they're going to use the same intervals, but they're just rearranged. So the 2 chord and the 1 chord will be spelled 7, 1, 3. Lowest interval to highest interval. Sometimes when the seventh is on the bottom, it can be a little bit hard to find that, you know, that shape. It's a little confusing because we're more accustomed to chords with the root on the bottom. Here's a little trick that you can use. Take your 2 finger, boom, put it on the root of the chord, and then fill in below and above with your 3 finger and your thumb. All right, I'll start with the seventh. It's going to be a scale step lower. There's the seventh and the root, and then I can find the third with my thumb very easily. And here's my voicing for A minor 7, 7, 1, 3. Okay. Now D dominant seventh, 1, 3, 7. Okay, I'll put my pinky on the root, come down to the third, and leave my thumb on the seventh. Again, a lot of reps. Finally, G major seventh, 7, 1, 3. Here's the root of the chord, here's the seventh of the chord, and here's the third, the major third. Okay? And first that might be a little bit like surprising to you, the sound of that. I love the sound of that. Great pianists like Bill Evans and, you know, pretty much everybody uses that chord voicing a lot. Is this the half step on the bottom of the chord just has kind of a shimmering quality to it. Okay. Usually in the B voicings, I'm not going to really substitute the sixth. Listen to the combination. It just sounds too much like E minor. So in the B voicings, we don't usually substitute the sixth. Okay, so I think I'm going to call it there. Time is getting short, and we'll get into Satin Doll in the next YouTube.